Hello, my name is Joshua Stevenson, a social studies teacher for the Allied Health College here at Ignite. So today we'd like to welcome one of the candidates for state representative in Kentucky's 67th district, incumbent Representative Rachel Roberts. We're so grateful to have you here with us. So our ninth grade scholars are have prepared a series of questions for you based on the issues that they find most pressing in the state of Kentucky. So before we get started, I'd just like to give you, a chance to briefly introduce yourself.
Thank you. Thanks everybody so much for having me today. I am so honored to be here, and it was so great to get to tour this facility. My name is Rachel Roberts. I am the state representative currently. You may not know my history, so let me tell you a little bit about it. I'm a small business owner. I own a yoga studio in Newport, Kentucky. And you might wonder how someone who owns, how a yoga teacher made her way to the State House. Well, I'll tell you that I think my practice helped to inform me being in the legislature, because in my yoga studio, I teach people to be as present as they can be and as contributory to their communities as you can be. When I took a hard look at my life, I realized I had the capacity to be doing more for my community. And those of us who are in a position to do that, who have the space in our lives to add more service, I think it's a duty. In the Jewish faith, it's called a mitzvah, a duty that you perform with great joy. So I saw that I had the capacity to do more for my community. I felt that it was my duty to do so. And I'm very grateful to the people of District 67 who saw fit to elect me. I was sworn into office on March 3rd, 2020. And I know you all have lived through the same extraordinary period of time that I have. So that was 10 days before the COVID shutdowns began. So I'm very much a COVID baby in the legislature. So even though I've only been there for 2 years, I think they sort of count as dog years. I think you guys think your COVID years in school probably count as dog years too, right? So it has been a very interesting period of time to be of service. I am forever grateful that I got to be of service to my community during these years. We do run for office every 2 years. So I am up again for election this November. And part of running every 2 years that I think is really great is it keeps you connected to your community. So I'm constantly out at community events, I'm constantly in our schools, I'm constantly in our senior centers, I'm constantly at bingo halls and festivals, just really trying to hear what the people of Northern Kentucky need and want for our region. One of the great things about holding public office is that people will absolutely tell you what they need and they want for their families, and it is a great privilege of mine to get to carry those stories and their voices to Frankfort. So I'm glad to be here, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I guess we'll start with our line of questions.
Hello, my name is Abby Vogel. Kentucky has banned safe access to abortions due to the trigger law passed before the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. There's obviously potential for this to affect many people negatively, especially those in lower socioeconomic classes and minorities. Do you think this law has affected citizens negatively? And if so, what can people do to help those seeking abortions?
Thank you so much for your question, Abby. I'll tell you a couple of things. Personally, yes, I think that these laws are detrimental to women and families in our community. Kentucky ranks, sadly, at the top of a lot of the bad lists. So we're at the top of the list for teenage pregnancy, for children being raised by their grandparents, for single mothers in the state. We don't do enough, in my opinion, to support families and mothers in this state. I have told this story many times, but I am a sexual assault survivor. I was assaulted when I was 14 years old. And any law that doesn't put in protections for the victims of rape and incest is nothing that I personally can stand behind. But what really matters here is where my district is. So when we're state representatives, we have a representative government. It's not my job to go to Frankfort and vote for Rachel Roberts. It's my job to go to Frankfort and carry the combined voices of the 47,000 people that I represent. So I do a lot of surveys and a lot of opportunities to talk to constituents so that I know what the combined voice of my district is. And so I've surveyed this particular issue quite a lot, and overwhelmingly the district is against the constitutional amendment and thinks that the bills that we have passed recently are too restrictive. It's in the 70% of people, in the high 70s of people who are opposed to the constitutional amendment. If we take out people who are just between the ages of 18 and 35, it's over 90% that oppose this and think that these current bills are too restrictive, are too extreme, and are too harmful.
Thank you.
Um, I'm Blitz Bowling, and in Kenton County, it is a requirement to get parental permission to go by a different name or a preferred name, along with a call to the parents to confirm. Additionally, pride flags are no longer allowed to be displayed because they're, quote, too political. My question for you is, what are your thoughts on specific rules against LGBTQ plus representation in schools across Kentucky? And do you have any intention of introducing or supporting laws that could change these rules?
Thank you so much for that question. I'll open by telling you that I am an ally and an advocate. I am a cisgendered, heterosexual, married woman, but I am an ally and an advocate. I am very proud of my group of friends and how diverse and thoughtful they are. I am a proud sponsor of the Fairness Ordinance, the statewide Fairness Ordinance, and also a co-sponsor last year of the conversion therapy ban for the state of Kentucky. One of the first things I did before I ever even got elected to office is that I championed a fairness ordinance in Newport, Kentucky. If you don't know what a fairness ordinance is, it's simply an ordinance that a city passes that says that no one should be able to allow to discriminate against any person based on their sexual orientation in housing or employment. Now, a lot of times this is seen as an LGBTQ bill, right? But it also means you can't discriminate against a heterosexual person for housing or employment. It should be something everyone could get behind. And I was really taken aback at how much resistance there was to that. But I'm proud to tell you that Newport was the 20th city in the state of Kentucky to pass a city ordinance. Almost every city in northern Kentucky has passed it now, but we need a statewide ordinance as well. And I will be co-sponsoring that bill again this year.
Very weak. Before I start, I wish to say thank you for being open about your story of being a victim of SA within the first question. It makes me personally feel comfortable that someone with experience advocates for the rights of people going through such. Now on to my question. My name is Evangeline Kuyper, and Kentucky has a noted epidemic of opioid abuse and abuse of painkillers that have been obtained legally or otherwise illegally through other sources. On your websites and otherwise legal documents, you have noted to say that you are going to help in the betterment of rehabilitation centers. Now, may I ask, how exactly do you plan to help the addicted and the betterment of rehabilitation centers?
Thank you so much for your question. I didn't catch your name.
Evangeline.
Evangeline, very nice to meet you. Thank you. A little bit about my personal history and why I care so much about this issue. My father was a substance use disorder counselor. I grew up with his private practice in the ground floor of our home. He came by that profession honestly. So it was the story of someone that I love deeply in my family. Because his private practice was in the ground floor of our home, I saw who came and went from my dad's practice. And I was home on those late nights when someone who was in need of his help would knock on our door way past hours and tell him that they needed him to help talk them out of a decision they were about to make. This is something I have seen firsthand and have been raised around my entire life. I care passionately about addiction services and recovery in our state, and we grossly underfund these services. So we got to figure out how to pay for more services. And when I say that, I mean real services. We need to make it so that not everybody's recovery path is the same. Some people can go through a 30-day rehab and come out better for it. Some people need a year. And we need services that can support those people and whatever their recovery path is. First and foremost, though, we got to keep people alive. We got to keep them alive until they're ready to find their path to recovery. So what I think we need to do is find those funding mechanisms to make sure that we can build more treatment facilities and more services around the state, which is why I have for the last several years carried the full cannabis legalization bill in the state. Kentucky is a state that has grown cannabis in the past. We are uniquely poised to do it. It is a marketplace for the state. It is being grown in Kentucky, it's being sold in Kentucky, it's being consumed in Kentucky. We just aren't regulating it for people's safety, and we're missing out on the tax revenue. So the bill that I have for this would put 30% for perpetuity of the revenues gained, which could be about $100 million a year, towards substance use disorder treatment programs, and also towards minority small business and education grant programs to help undo some of the wrongs of the war on drugs. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Roberts.
Hi, my name is Aubrey Gentil. In 2022 alone, there have been 35 school shootings, and with 2.5 months left, it already passed last year's record of 34. And although there have been none in Kentucky this year, there have been multiple in the past. So my question is, when in office, what will you do to help schools protect students from those incidents? And if one happens, what will you do to help in the recovery?
Thanks. I'll tell you that one of my first thoughts when I walked into your school today was how much glass there is here. Like, it weighed on me when I walked into the school, and that shouldn't be the first thought I have when I come to speak to ninth graders in our state. I'm ashamed to admit that to you, but that was my first impression of your school today. When polled and when surveyed, Kentuckians and Americans broadly support common sense gun legislation. They do. It's the will of the politicians or the lack thereof that are keeping us from this in the state. This is a big problem with a lot of arms to it, and one of those arms is mental health care, which is part of why I am such a champion for mental health care access throughout our country and throughout our state. I have put forward multiple times and will again this year a bill to make it so that we have covered every year at 100% a mental health wellness checkup. So each of you probably every year goes to your family doctor and has a physical checkup. That's generally speaking covered at 100% by your insurance. I think healthcare is holistic. It's not just the body, but it's also the mind and the heart and the spirit. And I think that if we started people, especially young people, having a relationship with a mental health care provider, then God forbid, somewhere in crisis down the line, you would already have someone that you trust and have a relationship with to have those conversations. We also don't have enough mental health care providers in the state, so I think a bill like this that would require insurers to cover at 100% that checkup every year would help us to entice mental health care providers to come to our state to start trying to help everyone live a healthier, happier, more joy-filled, and more fulfilling life so that we can figure out why this is happening and help people out of these times of crisis and fear.
Thank you.
Fancy meeting you again.
Hi, my name is Gracie Goelz. Healthcare these days is expensive and many people cannot afford it, with some avoiding going to get help due to not having enough money to pay it off. There's also a shortage of nurses and physicians. My question is, what could the state of Kentucky do to encourage more people to become nurses and physicians? And do you plan on trying to reduce the price of healthcare and getting people the help they need?
Thank you for the question. You guys are doing a great job here. I just got to tour your medical wing right over there and see it set up for Fright Night, which was pretty awesome. You are absolutely correct. We have too few people in the medical profession in our state. We're lucky here in northern Kentucky that we have so many resources in the medical sphere up here and so many nonprofits to help people with it. But especially in rural Kentucky, we've got a real problem. We have medical care deserts in this state. The first question on reproductive rights, that's going to make it even harder for us to recruit and retain doctors here because they're going to start fearing, they already are, fearing where they can balance their Hippocratic oath with the limitations on options that they're allowed to provide to their patients. What we need to do is make sure that we are focusing on things like STEAM, like you do here in this school, like we are training people up in the sciences and medical arts. We need to make sure that those are good paying jobs that make people want to stay here, train here, raise their family here. And then as far as the costs go, we need to really start taking a look at how we price things. We have some issues coming up at the federal level as far as Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement that are going to make it even harder on our providers, especially our rural providers. One of the bills that I have put forward, along with my colleague, Representative Stevenson, is an all-payers database. So each of you, when you want to buy something, you probably look around to see where you can find it for the least amount of money you can pay for it, right? Everybody likes to get a deal. The same thing is true in the medical sphere. So let's say you need an x-ray for a broken leg, and it's not super emergent, you got a little fracture, you got some time. It's really hard for you as an individual to figure out whether that x-ray is going to be cheaper here or in Cincinnati or in Campbell County where I live. So an all-payers database would allow you to do that. You could put in the procedure you need, see how much it costs at each facility, and then decide if it's worth it to you to maybe drive 30 minutes to save a few $100s. I think that is one of the parts that's really important in there.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cruz, and the Healthcare Improvement Act of 2021 makes various changes to the healthcare marketplace. such as expanding premium assistance, encouraging states to expand Medicaid, and establishing a public health insurance option. On your website, you expressed that healthcare causes families financial devastation. So my question for you is, as for the state of Kentucky, how are you going to advocate for families to have healthcare more financially available to them?
Thank you so much for that question. So in truth, everyone is one injury or illness away from financial ruin. That's the truth of our current financial situation. That's not okay. Healthcare is a basic human right. I've had the great fortune to travel around the world. I've done like 30 countries. If I can leave you with one grain of wisdom before I go, please hear me. Travel. It is the great equalizer in the world. It will open your eyes to everything. And I've seen how other countries handle it. I'll just tell you a personal story. I got sick when I was in India, and I ended up having to go to the hospital there. I ended up spending the night. I saw gastroenterologists and specialists because I'd gotten a parasite. I'll spare you the details beyond that. I had phenomenal care. I stayed overnight there, and my bill was $35. And the hospital is actually nicer than where I was staying, so it's a little hard to leave, honestly. There are ways to do this, and one of the solutions is for all of us to come together. And when I say all of us, I mean all of the stakeholders. Whenever I work on any kind of a bill, I try to bring in everyone, right? So if we're going to work on healthcare, we need to talk to patients, we need to talk to nurses and doctors, and the people who run the hospital administration, the people who run the cafeteria in the hospital can help us understand the costs associated there and the dietary needs there. We need to talk to insurers. We need to talk to government. We need everyone at the table for this solution. And right now we're all siloed and we're all fighting for certain things and not necessarily collaborating enough, I think. One of the good things that happened during COVID is that we had expanded access to Medicare and Medicaid for people. And I think we saw some really good health outcomes from that. So we've had some experiments here that have shown us some of the tools we need to make this even more accessible to people.
Okay, thank you.
This is all the ladies today asking the questions. I like it, bring it.
My name is Kelsey Lewis, and as of October 6, 2022, 43% of Kentucky's jails are dangerously overcrowded, yet not a single state prison is overcrowded nor near being so. 15 out of 73 jails are operating at 150% overcapacity, and 7 of those 15 are operating at 175% overcapacity. Do you have any plans of decreasing these numbers, and if so, what are they?
Thank you for that question. You're absolutely right. It's one of the other places that Kentucky leads, sadly, is in the number of women who are incarcerated. We have some good programs that have been happening here in northern Kentucky specifically, where we're working on ways to keep people out of jail for things like drug charges and things along those lines. So we're really starting to move people out of the incarceration system and into a recovery system. And I think we need to put a lot more effort there, that we are treating people who are suffering the disease of addiction as people who need treatment and not incarceration. The bill that I talked about earlier, my cannabis bill, it's called the Let's Grow Act. Let's is an acronym: legalize, expunge, treat, and tax. And the E is expunge. We need to expunge these low-level offenses, especially on things like just simple cannabis possession, where we aren't necessarily incarcerating a lot of people for just cannabis possession anymore, but we are reincarcerating people for parole violations because of it and putting people back in jail for something like that, a nonviolent offense like that. I think as a General Assembly, our business shouldn't be creating more felonies. I think we need to be really judicious about increasing penalties for things. One of the bills that I actually voted against most of the Democrats, I'm a Democrat, but I voted against my party, and even the sponsor, who's a Democratic sponsor on a bill this year, which was the porch pirate bill. If you steal a package off somebody's porch, that's now a felony. Now, we'd raised the felony threshold the year before from $500 to $1,000. So before we raised that threshold, if someone stole something that was worth over $500, it was a felony. A felony's tough. Felony changes your life and makes it really hard. So we raised that to $1,000. But now we're saying if you steal anything off anybody's porch, that's a felony. And it's from any common carrier. So if I, make a poor dietary decision and order myself some Chipotle delivered to my front porch and someone's hungry and they take it off my porch, I don't think they should have a felony and be incarcerated for that. So I think those are some of the solutions. We need to work on expungement. We need to be really careful about when we're increasing penalties for things.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cayleigh Dorman. Many people are misinformed about birth and other related processes, and minors are allowed access to birth control forms in the state of Kentucky. People are currently working to end tax on menstruational products as well. If taxes on reproductive products do not decrease, to what extent would you push to pass legislation on it?
I love this question because I am filing one of the pink tax bills this year. I think that we should not be taxing these products. I think they are staple items, just like food, and they shouldn't be taxed. But I'm going to take it a step further. I don't think it should just be menstrual products. I think it should be diapers and all care products for newborns and babies, and also for seniors, because senior incontinence products are very expensive for people who are on fixed incomes. So I am carrying that bill. I answered that question quickly, and I keep running out of time, but I'm going to use this as a teachable moment. So you can track bills in the legislature, and I'm sure you'll learn this in your government class, legislature.ky.gov. You can go there and see the history of every passed bill. You can see every vote on it, every amendment that was taken for it. We can't pre-file bills anymore, so it's a little harder for you to see what's coming up next year, but we can put working drafts up there. So if you do that, you'll see one of my working drafts is that tax bill on menstrual products and diapers and senior products. So I encourage you to go look at that. Take a look at a working draft. Read through it. I put it up there specifically so that people would look at it and tell me if I missed anything or I got any of it wrong. I'm an expert in one thing, how to own a yoga studio in Newport, Kentucky. And everything else, I need other expert input on. So if it's something you care about, then you're an expert, and I want your input on it.
Thank you.
Hi. Hello, my name is Jayden, Harrel, and 312,000 people in the state of Kentucky cannot vote because of various voter disenfranchisement laws implemented. This means 1 in 11 voting age Kentuckians and 1 in 4 black Kentuckians are not able to vote, which is exacerbated by over-policing in communities of color. My question is, how are you able to influence better voting rights in the state of Kentucky?
Thank you for that question. The governor did a great job when he first came into office by restoring a lot of people's voting rights. I'm not sure that information has been well enough disseminated down to everybody who actually needs to know about it. You look at what's happening in Florida right now, where people are being arrested for voting when they legitimately thought they had had their rights restored. Things like that are really disenfranchising to people who have had their voting rights stripped from them. I think if you have served your debt to society and completed your paying fines and fees and anything associated with your conviction, that we want those people to be able to come back fully into society, and a big part of being a contributory citizen of the United States is being part of the political process, of being part of government. When you guys are old enough to vote, I hope you'll hear me say this. It's not just a privilege to get to vote, it's your duty to do it. And I love that you're doing this now and that you're learning about this in the 9th grade, because state government and local government is so important to your daily life. Not only just to know about, but when it comes to voting, you're hiring, right? I'm here, I'm interviewing for a job right now. It's a job I already have, so it's my annual or my semi-annual review, and I'm asking you to tell me that I did it well enough to keep it, right? Or you'll decide that I'm not, and you'll hire someone else for that job. That's how important your vote is each time, and then you can get even more impactful than that when you decide to support candidates and even run for office yourself somewhere down the line. So I love that you're asking these questions, that you care about these issues. The simple answer to your question is, I think that once someone's paid their debt to society, we don't only want them to vote again, we need them to, because that helps them to be fully contributing members of the society again. We need to limit the number of felonies so that we're taking voting rights away from fewer people for nonviolent offenses specifically.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chrisilla Dyko. Kentucky. Huh? Oh yeah. My name is Chrisilla Dyko. Kentucky's climate is changing. Although the average temperatures did not change, most of the Commonwealth has warmed in the past 20 years. Average annual rainfall is also increasing, and a rising percentage of the rain is falling on the 4 wettest days of the year. We also are facing larger amounts of heat waves per year, and it's estimated that there will be as many as 70 heat waves by 2050. What would you do to help Kentucky overcome these high temperatures and amount of rainfall?
Thank you. That was a climate change question, if anybody couldn't hear. So this past year has shown us in Kentucky how much the climate is changing. The horrific tornadoes of last year, I mean, there was a tornado that was on the ground for 200 miles almost. That's never happened in my lifetime that I'm aware of. My husband and I were down in eastern Kentucky right after the floods, and the things I saw there are so imprinted on my mind. So what happened in eastern Kentucky was that 11 inches of rain fell in a matter of just a couple of hours. And you think about, a pool of water growing 11 inches, that might not sound like that high, but we're talking about flood stages that had never been above 16 feet before becoming 21 feet. And the way that happened was, think about a piece of land that had like a trampoline on it, a family that had a trampoline, and the floods came down, the waters came down through the hollers, and a wave would come and it would wash that trampoline that would then block the culvert and create this massive lake behind it. We saw a tree, a full-size tree, 30 feet up, another tree, because the water had lifted it that high and it got lodged 30 feet above the ground. That's how high the water was in one of the places that we drove through. This is the issue of our lifetimes. Everything else, is important. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying we are fighting many battles on many fronts right now, but we only have one Earth, and we need to take good care of her. I'm really proud of what the governor has done in encouraging green businesses to come here. Just landed 6,000 jobs at a Ford plant that is going to be building the future of electric vehicles and electric batteries here. Renewable energy is our future, and we in Kentucky are uniquely poised to be really good at this because we have an energy past, right? So we have people who already understand the basics of how to build our grid, how to provide energy to our communities. So I'm excited about this future. I think this is one of those times where future casting and the health of our state are really aligned. We can be really good at this, and we need to be, because this is the land that we have, right? I'll also just add, before, I know I'm running out of time, we live in such a beautiful state. So I think that tourism is a real opportunity here for us to train people up and teach people how valuable our land is here, how beautiful our state is. Once you see it, you can't help but just want to take care of the place and be good stewards of the land.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jamie Golden, and on your campaign website, you place a lot of focus on improving education, such as introducing full-day kindergarten, early reading interventions, and increased support for community colleges. What plans do you have to support each of these goals? What methods do you have to encourage parents to put their kids in early reading interventions?
Thank you for the question. I'm a proud product of public schools. I wouldn't be where I was if I hadn't had access to a good, free education. I'm also really blessed in that I have parents that value education above anything else. When I was growing up, one of my parents was always in school, and I mean that like always. They have 5 degrees between the two of them, so one would be in college while the other one was working, and so on. My mom went to law school when I was 15 years old. So I would encourage you to be lifelong learners. I told you to travel. That's my first pearl of wisdom to you. My second, and maybe even bigger pearl of wisdom to you, is always stay curious. Never stop being a student. Always be your own best student and your own best teacher. I promise you, if you stay curious, life will be amazing. We need to fully fund our public schools. We need to make sure that our communities have what they need so that students arrive to school ready to learn. In the community I live in, we have a huge percentage, the vast majority of the students in my school district where I live are housing and food insecure. We're asking students to come to school and test well when they don't have a key to a safe place to call home, and when oftentimes their only meals are coming from the school system. We're asking teachers to do more than teach. We're asking teachers to, in large part, be social workers and therapists and providers for their students. We're putting too much burden on them and not enough necessarily on allowing them just to teach. I love that I was told when I was walking around here that I think one of the missions of the school is care first, teach second. Is that right? Did I get that right? I think that's so beautiful. I love that your teachers can do that here. I wish more students had the opportunity for it. So we are working actively to make sure our teachers feel supported. That makes it so that they feel safe in their teaching profession, that the profession is honored, that they are respected, that they have a future in it and a future beyond their teaching years, and to make sure that students have the services they need to arrive in our public schools ready to learn.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kylie Long. House Bill 127, which was made to expand access to assisted outpatient treatment, was passed June 22nd this year. It provides more thorough evaluation for court-ordered treatment. My question to you is, what is your opinion on the bill that it was passed, and is there more that needs to be done?
Thank you for that question. I'm trying to remember that specific bill, 127. It was a mental health care bill that allowed for more outpatient treatment. Yeah, so absolutely, we need as much as we can possibly have in the state for mental health care providers. I mentioned earlier that we don't have enough providers in this state. Again, we are really lucky up here in northern Kentucky because we have more resources up here because we have a bigger population and a bigger economic base. Throughout the state, this is a really, really, really big problem. One other kind of good thing that came out of COVID, one other good thing that came out of the COVID period of time was an expansion on telehealth, right? So everyone in the state who has access to internet, which is not everyone in the state, now has access to telehealth if they can find a provider and if they can, access it that way. As far as treatment in the state, I've touched on this a couple of times, but we just need to make sure that we have as robust a treatment program around here as possible so that what people need, they have access to, and we don't have that in the state right now. So I'm going to be for anything that helps us to expand treatment options in the state and make sure that people not only have the access to it, but also have the comfort level to access those. We have to remove the stigma around mental health care in our state, which is a lot of the work I do. I serve on the Mental Health America board for Kentucky. We try to make sure that people have access to mental health screenings, that we normalize it as much as possible, that we have these conversations as much as possible. So thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Savannah. Lots of people that have mental health issues don't get the professional care they need due to how much it costs. The prices for recovery from mental illness should be more affordable for people. I noticed that you are a board member of Mental Health America. What could you do to improve the costs of treatment for mental health?
Thank you very much. I love that you all are so focused on this as I am. This conversation seems to be normal for people of your age group, and that's great. It's not as normal, sadly, for people of my age group. But we're getting there, slowly but surely. So thank you, as the youth always do, for leading the way for the rest of us. Back to some of the bills I talked about, one of the things I think is making sure that we have that covered expense for an annual mental health checkup. If we did that, if people had that ongoing relationship with a provider, then I think it would save the state a lot of money on mental health services. We'd help keep people out of crisis and hopefully mitigate some costs that way and make it more accessible to everyone. It's an interesting thing with our health insurance. They tend to cover physical things pretty well, except we cut out dental and we cut out vision, and a lot of times we make it really hard on mental health care stuff. One of the reasons my father left private practice as a substance use disorder counselor, and this was decades ago, was that insurance providers stopped covering a lot of visits. So he'd get to see a patient 6 times, and he couldn't really help someone in just 6 visits. So we've seen therapists leave the profession because it's not fulfilling to them anymore. They don't feel like they can get the job done. So anything we can do to make this more accessible, to entice therapists to come to the state and to make it so that more and more people can afford it is something I'm going to be absolutely for. And I think one of the big ways is the bill that I told you about to make those annual visits covered at 100% by insurance providers.
Okay, thanks.
You all asked such thoughtful questions. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right, so thank you very much, Representative Roberts, for coming and visiting us today and answering, in a very thoughtful way, all the questions that the students had. And thank you for all the students that took, a very significant portion of their time to ask these questions and to do the research. So, yep, this has been a great experience, and everybody have a great day.
If I could just add one more quick thing. I think you all know this based on my walk around, but I'm on TikTok, Rachel4KY, and I use that specifically to try and teach people how state government works. It's sort of a secret society. You don't know until you're in it, and I want you to be as engaged in state government as possible. So if you don't already follow it, please do, and comment and let me know what else about state government you want to know about, and I am happy to make some content and share what I know. Thanks everybody so much.